Okay, thank you. Welcome everybody to our already fifth webinar in series within Ready4NetZero project funded by OIC, European Climate Initiative by German Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Action. This webinar is a part of a capacity building program. My name is Izabela Kuśnierz, and I'm a project manager in the Association of Municipalities Polish Network Energy4, which is the coordinator of our project. Today's webinar will be hosted by our Romanian partner, the Romanian Network of Energy4. I'm very much looking forward to today's topic. Real and true change requires not only leaders who will be walking at the forefront of our energy transition, but also a group of many people who will hear that voice and follow it. So today we will talk about engaging the public so that we can work together on many levels to achieve our goal, which is climate neutrality. I'm really looking forward to hearing a lot of interesting inspiration from our invited guests. After the presentation of our three speakers, who will be introduced in just a moment. In the second part of the webinar, we will have a discussion, the session of discussion with answering questions. But before we start with the presentation, I would like to introduce you a few technicalities and tell you a little bit more about our project. So first of all, translation services are provided today. Our main language, the main language of our webinar will be English, but you can activate any of four languages available, Croatian, Hungarian, Polish, and Romanian. To do so, you have to click on the globe button at the bottom of your screen and choose the desired channel. For our webinars, we are using Zoom meetings, which allow us to see each other. We are inviting you to turn on the camera, edit your name, also the record if you wish. In case of any issue, you can type via chat to us, and we are here to assist you. During the Q&A session, you'll be able also to ask the questions by raising hands. During the presentations, not to interrupt our speakers, please use chat for the question, but when the Q&A session will come, you can raise hand. We will monitor all the questions in the chat, and at the appropriate time, we'll ask them to our speakers. So now I would like to take a moment to introduce our project a little bit. Those of you who have joined our webinar before you are already familiar with it. So I will try to keep this introduced a little short. So the transition to climate neutral society is obviously a very urgent challenge, and the local governments are at the first line of it. They play also a crucial role in addressing climate change effects as well. With the project, we aim to support small and medium cities in Poland, Romania, Hungary, and Croatia. in this journey towards climate neutrality. Our focus is aimed at developing and implementing local long-term climate neutrality strategies. We want to achieve these goals with several of products, several of outcomes. First of all, we have the capacity development program. We will also have in-person workshops in pilot cities, online training events, and also a study visit to Germany. Within our activities, we will be developing and supporting concrete action that will contribute to the development of this local long-term climate neutrality strategies in pilot cities in our countries. We have also created the online platform where you can find all the recordings of before of previous webinars, and also this webinar afterwards, together with all the presentation. We have also gathered all the question and answer from previous Q&A sessions, so you can go to our platform and check it. One more product that we are working on now is the guidance for the municipalities. You can expect the publication in upcoming weeks, spring this year. From this guidance, you will be able to learn about the developing of ambitious local long-term climate neutrality strategies. You'll be able to dive deeper into key elements of such strategies, which are significant to achieve success in the developing process. For example, financing, policy coherence, engaging local community and key stakeholders. You'll be able also to explore concrete measures in few sectors like building or mobility. And the third chapter of our guidance also outlines transformation pathways, which provide the framework that cities can adapt to their needs. So we already invite you to keep an eye on our platform, on our website, where all the information about our future activities, publications, will be published. I can assume that you have joined our webinar today because you are interested in the topic. So I will now give the floor to Mariana, which will be moderating the main part of our webinar today. Thank you.
Good morning to all participants and our guests, and thank you, Isabella, for opening the webinar. My name is Mariana Țânțărean, and together with my colleague Alina Alexa, we will be your moderators for today. Just to be on track, now I will pass the floor to our first speaker, Oliver Holke. I hope that I pronounced it right. Advisor for Communication at the European Climate Initiative, or EUCI. Oliver will begin with a brief introduction of himself, followed by a presentation on the challenges of communicating climate neutrality. Oliver, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hello and a good day. Thank you very much for the nice introduction. And thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very grateful to the organizers of the UER team from the Romanian Network of Energy Cities, especially Dia, Raluca, Anka, and Mariana. Thank you. Yeah, my name is Oliver Hölke. I was born in Hamburg, in Germany, around 60 years ago. And I've been working in the communication sector for over 30 years. And I'm delighted to share a little about my experiences today. focusing on a topic that is very close to my heart. It's communication. For me, communication is the key, and I will underline why communication, whether external or internal, is vital for your job, your work environment, your company, or the project you are involved in. So I hope now that you see my presentation. Okay, yes, you do. The OIKI, yeah, some words to the OIKI. For the past 4 years, I've been the head of communication for the European Climate Initiative, the OIKI. It has been launched by the German federal government in 2017, so it's now 7 years old, to advance climate action in Europe. And we finance cross-border projects, provide training, and bring the European climate action community together, fostering a vibrant exchange of ideas and expertise, and ensuring the engagement of our project partners has a lasting impact. So we want all of you to have a lasting impact in order to accelerate climate action in Europe. The OIKI projects, which are selected through a yearly call for project ideas, contribute to the expansion of a renewable energy. And let me see here. We have 440 organizations working with us since 2017. And we have, let me see, 210 projects. We are collaborating with in 31 European countries with a total funding of about 95 million euros. By the way, the current call for project ideas is still running until 12th of March. It might be interesting for you. Just have a look at our website, oiki.de/en, or follow us on our social media channels, and you will get to know a little bit more about the project call, or the call for project ideas. Okay. The BMWK, the program is now under the jurisdiction of the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Protection. And to clarify, I'm not an employee of the ministry, but I work for the GIZ. This is the Deutsche Gesellschaft für internationale Zusammenarbeit, which implements the OIKI on behalf of the ministry. And the GIZ is a service provider, mainly in the field of international cooperation for sustainable development and international education work. Our slogan is more or less, we are dedicated to shaping a future worth living around the world. So we have over 50 years of experience in a wide variety of areas, including economic development, employment promotion, energy, environment, peace, and security. We are a federal enterprise with a diverse expertise, and the demand is around the globe. So from the German government, European Union institutions, the United Nations, the private sector, and governments of other countries, we work with business, civil society actors, and research institutions. We foster successful interaction between development policy and other policy fields. Now let me delve into the essence of my talk. I'm sure you all recognize the importance of communications, but today I want to emphasize how crucial communication is, particularly in the realms of climate action and sustainability. And I will tell you a bit of my experiences, my life as a communicator, and how I learned that it is essential to discuss, define, promote, and disseminate the positive actions you undertake. So where do I come from? I worked in a radio station for many years. That's a job where clear expression is crucial. The art lies in simple words without convoluted sentences. Back then, we used the abbreviation KISS. I assume you heard of the rock band KISS, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about KISS. Keep it short and simple. This was true then and remains relevant today. What does it mean? It means use some simple rules if you want to capturing and retaining the listener's attention. First of all, you need to know your messages and what you want to convey. Sometimes you just have less than a minute, I'm talking about the radio, less than a minute to explain what you want to tell. It's essential to put one information in one sentence so people can follow you easily. Do not put 3 or 4 pieces of information into one sentence. Second, my advice would be to avoid becoming too boring or too abstract. Third, you have to know your audience. When I was talking on radio, I imagined in this moment when I was talking, I talked to my uncle or my friend from school days, or I just in the moment I'm talking to this nice cashier in the supermarket, and I want them to understand me. So I talk easy and comprehensible. And last but not least, before talking, I needed to structure my text, which means I named the main character um, and tell the story by answering the following questions. What happened? Where? Why? When was that? And how many? Storytelling is vital. Now here I have on this slide what I just said. My goal is what's my core message, to whom I talk to. I just said talk easy, because just imagine you're talking to your grandma so that she understands what you're talking about. My well-structured text is also important before I talk. Who acts, what happens, where, why, when was that, and how many. And what's the success? People are switching on the radio. So radio was an excellent school for me as a communicator. And I want to give you some tips right now. While we all do great things, I know you all do great things. How well do we communicate them? Too often, we package our information in incomprehensible sentences, forgetting that good communication is not just a skill, but a responsibility towards those we work for. In business, communication needs to be clear and efficient. People are busy and they don't have time to read long walls of text or listen to long presentations where the key info is shared at the very end. So we have a responsibility, and I would like to offer you a few tips on using simple methods to convey and content in an understandable way, and thus show responsibility. Firstly, we have the elevator talk. This term refers to the ability to convey a clear message in the time it takes an elevator to travel from one floor to another. So that's about 30 seconds to a minute, 30 seconds to 60 seconds time. During this time, state the most important aspects. What do you do? Why you do it? how you do it, and what you aim to achieve. Just imagine you're in the elevator with a colleague or with a friend or a partner, and he asks you, what are you doing? And you just have 30 or 60 seconds time. So this would be a very good practice to shorten and to make a clear message what you are doing. It's kind of business card. It's a flagship, your unique selling point. That's what you're talking about. Practice it until you can deliver it and fluently and convincingly, taking every opportunity to share it. The second method is the pyramid principle, or the Minto pyramid principle. Why Minto? The management consultant Barbara Minto is considered the inventor. She created this pyramid back in 1963, 60 years ago, as a consultant at McKinsey. And this communication model organizes information logically and hierarchically. Use the Minto pyramid to give your communication a top-down structure and get your message across quickly and clearly. Lead with the most important information on top of the pyramid. Start with a conclusion or your core message. So very, very short and simple. Then provide arguments. These should be fairly short. Write them as a summary of your main points. This part should be explain the why behind your conclusion or your recommendation. And finally, support your point with detailed information. This ensures you always say the most important thing first, maintaining the listener's attention and showing the relevance of your information. The third tip is the target group analysis. It's always worthwhile asking yourself, who is my audience? Adapt your communication to the needs, expectations, and interests of your partners. Know who you are and communicating with your partners, what they know and what they want and what they feel. This is the way to be successful in communication. Tailor your communication to inform, motivate, or inspire your audience. These were just a few tips to assist you in your considerations. Now my conclusion, and I'm coming to the end. External communication is crucial for the image and reputation of your company or your project. It builds and maintains relationships and trust with customers, partners, stakeholders, and the public. And communication conveys the values, goals, services, and offers of the company or project, increasing visibility, awareness, and competitiveness. Well, for me, communication is the key to success in your job, work environment, company, or project. I'm confident that effective communication will enhance your work, and by letting your partners understand, appreciate, and support, you can make a real difference. Thus, we should think transparently and empathetically about the information needed by the people whose well-being we work for. We all hold high standards for ourselves on our work, and we should have the same expectations for communication. So thank you for your attention. I wish you much success in your communication work.
Thank you, Oliver, for your presentation and for all the practical tips. Practicalities are really very important for effective communication, so it was really, really useful. Thank you. If we have specific questions related to Oliver's presentation, I would ask participants to write them in the chat. Otherwise, we will have a Q&A section at the end of our webinar. But if you have something specific for Oliver, I invite you to ask. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have a question from Corina. So Oliver, can you tell us any tips specifically for climate communication?
Depends on which medium you're referring to. Of course, climate communication in its basic is clearly nearly the same as any other communication. Be transparent, be clear what you're saying, and of course, depends on where you are communicating. So if you're communicating, for instance, in social media, you should use other words than when you're communicating in an, let's say, in a paper for experts, or if you're communicating with a ministry, of course, then you need other words and then you need more facts. If you want to reach out the normal public, you have to always use simple words and pictures to get the attention of your audience, especially in climate action. I know you always see the ice bear on in the Antarctic floating on an ice shell. This was created to get a picture for the people how urgent it is, how the climate change is already developed. So if you can find a picture like this, like an ice bear on an ice shelf, that would be really good for your project, and it would be, I think, would be good for your communication to make clear how urgent it is to take action, and especially to take climate action. Yeah, pictures are very good. It's like a cinema in your head. That's what people help to understand what you're doing. So it's not good to talk about technical or abstracts. That's too far away from their daily life. If you want to reach out to them, and if you want people to understand what you're talking about, create some lively picture. That would be my advice. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So always remember to adapt the message, no matter how complex is the issue, to the language that your target audience can understand. Thank you very much, Oliver. Thank you very much. Mariana?
You're welcome.
Thank you. So now passing the floor to our next guest, Alison Lecoeur. I'm terrible pronouncing names, I'm sorry. Alison is a communication and EU policy at Energy Cities, and she will have a presentation about getting people on board. How can cities mobilize and empower citizens in their transition to climate neutrality? Alison, thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Mariana, for the introduction. Let me share my screen. Up. Can you all see my presentation? Yes. Okay, so as Mariana said, my name is Alison Lecoeur. Thank you again for the invitation to OER and also to the project and bringing together this webinar to talk about the importance of communication. I work for Energy Cities. For those who don't know, Energy Cities is a European network of cities of around 200 cities and also national city networks across Europe, and we support municipalities in their clean and fair energy transitions. I'm a communication specialist working specifically on the topic of local governance and also EU policy and how can we better connect the two, kind of bringing the abstract, big EU targets down concretely to the local level and engaging all citizens via the local level to make the European objectives a reality. So that's what I work on in my daily life. Today, I will discuss the question of mobilizing and empowering citizens in cities' journey towards climate neutrality. So we all know that cities are responsible for more than 70% of the EU's emissions, but at the same time, municipalities themselves are only responsible for 5 to 15% of the emissions. So the big question here that you have in your municipalities and at the local level is, how do you reach that other 90%, and how do you make sure that they get engaged in your journey towards climate neutrality? You can have a great plan, but if you don't engage this 90%, you're not going to get anywhere, and you're not going to get where you need to get. So the big question really is knowing that the local level and the local governments are the first level of government, the first contact with citizens, also the level that the citizens trust most. It's the closest to them. What can local governments do to engage this 90%? It's a big question, as Oliver was saying, about communication, communicating right, and also engagement. How do you bring the communication to the engagement? So today I'm going to really talk about 3 steps to communication and engagement. First, raising awareness. Second, engaging, interacting, and third, empowering to really reach this 90%. So the first step is all about raising awareness. This is why we're here. Here I'm going to echo a lot of what Oliver said about really making the journey to net zero understandable to all. That's the big challenge I think we have. What does this mean? This means speaking a language that everyone understands. For any communication to be understood, you need to speak the same language as your target audience. Today, even, we know some people don't speak English. We have interpreters helping us. This is the only way we can effectively communicate. So raising awareness is a lot about adapting your language to your target audience. As energy managers or people who work in climate departments, we're very used to speaking and reducing emissions by 20%, kilowatts per hour. But if you go to your neighbor and you speak in those terms, people are not going to understand what you're talking about. It's very abstract. So how can you make this understandable to the general public? How can you, it's really the first step is about shedding this technical language that you're used to speaking in because the people around you understand it. But if you want to go further, you're going to need to find another language. People cannot see greenhouse gas emissions. They can't see when your city has lowered 15% of your emissions. It's just not something that they see in their day-to-day. However, people can see the actions your city is taking. They can see when you're putting in a bike lane, they can see when you plant trees, they can see when your city is getting more green. So really the first step to communicating well and raising awareness around action and what your city is doing is to add this tangible layer that everyone can understand and that everyone can relate to. This is really important. It's important to have the science-based target, but then it's important to work with other departments, especially the communication department, if you're energy managers, if you're creating your city's climate plan, to work together with the communication team to find this common language, to pinpoint these actions that you can communicate clearly that will resonate with people. So here, as an inspiration, I don't know if you've heard of the Flemish Local Pact. The region of Flanders in Belgium developed a local energy and climate pact focusing on 4 areas: greening, energy, mobility, and rainwater. And they set concrete objectives in these areas for all the municipalities who have signed the pact, which add up to 300 municipalities. So there's really a lot of municipalities part of this pact. And here they lay out the region has laid out 18 measures that your city can get on board with or can try to put into place. These measures are like planting 1 tree per inhabitant, 50 collective renovations per 1,000 housing units, 1 charging point per 100 inhabitants. So very, very concrete, tangible. And the important thing is that these measures come in as an additional layer to the city's sustainable energy and action plan, because The first condition to being part of this pact is that the municipality has already signed the Covenant of Mayors and already has their action plan. So they have all the emission reduction plan, but then on top of that, they're like, now we're going to put these very tangible actions. We're going to try to put them into place. And the regional government has developed a platform where you can follow these actions, and citizens themselves can see, oh, this is what my municipality is trying to do. And they can say, hey, where's my meter of bike lane if they don't see it coming? So it creates a sort of transparency and accountability, and it engages citizens in the journey. Following this inspiration at Energy Cities, we developed a publication called Tangible Targets for Cities. So it's sort of a menu of 33 concrete goals that we have seen that cities across Europe have taken really to advance and accelerate their energy transition. So these targets, again, very concrete, very tangible, quantifiable for the general public. 100% of parking areas are covered by PV panels, 1 bike bus route per school, 20-kilometer-hour default speed limit. Those are things that people can actually relate to and see in their everyday lives. Reclaiming 80 dwellings from vacancy every year. So if your city sets these tangible targets, then they can effectively communicate about them every year. Where are we? And people can engage more closely. They can really be part of the journey to climate neutrality, and they know what's going on in your climate plan beyond the emission reduction. So once you've taken that step and you're raising awareness, now the question is, how do you engage and how do you make the journey interactive? So we all know that communication is never one way. It's about having a conversation. So once you speak, you're speaking someone's language, they understand you, you need to make sure they're able to respond. And this you can do through setting up interactive online platforms, forums, or participatory events that people can really take part in, and there they will get motivated and they'll feel like they're part of the journey of your city's actions. For this, it's important to set up very clear objective to these forums, to these platforms, and very clear call to actions, so people know how to participate and what their participation will bring. We all know today that one of the big challenges is catching people's attention to start with. So developing, making sure you develop material around this journey. For example, if you're gonna define a branding for your journey to climate neutrality, and make sure you develop a platform that is engaging, that is interactive, also that's inclusive. It's very important to make sure that everyone feels like they can be part of this. So you're not just talking to one kind of audience group, not just to young people, but making sure you kind of, in your communication, reflect all the population in your city, and creating the specific branding and consistency that will make sure that will offer kind of this community that people can engage in. People can feel like they're part of a common journey. They're going towards an objective together. They can recognize the actions that are part of this journey and how to be part of it. So a big example here and big inspiration we have that we usually bring up a lot in Energy Cities is Leuven 2030. So again, sorry, another example from Belgium. I have examples from other countries too, but Leuven 2030 was very interesting example, because it's an NGO based on a shared governance model between local authorities, businesses, knowledge institutions, and civil society organizations that develops together the roadmap for Leuven's climate neutrality. So the legitimacy really lies in this horizontal structure in which citizens can take active part in debate and in decision making. And for example, one of the things here that one of the projects Leuven 2030 put in place was the taking away of cars at the city center. And the fact that citizens co-created and were part of this decision really helps reduce friction in the moment to implement the project. And inspired by Leuven 2030 Energy Cities, we coordinated a project between 2019 and 2022 called Tomorrow, where 6 cities tried to put in place similar participatory processes. And one of the main tools and resources here that I'm sharing with you is a guidebook on how to design participatory transformative processes for just and climate neutral cities. So here, this guidebook tells you how to start within your own internal organization to then involve external stakeholders and go broader to citizens. One of the cities that participated was Valencia. And here I just put a few screenshots of these platforms, these online platforms that have a specific branding around the journey to 2030 and climate neutrality. And you can, if you go to these platforms, you'll see they're very interactive, they have a captivating design, a captivating branding, and it's interesting to see how they have the calls to actions they have. And really, Valencia created also an alliance that anyone can participate in. They can join online, but then on social media, there's on all different platforms they can participate to this journey into the mission 2030. And the last step after engaging is really empowering citizens and making sure the journey is everyone's journey. So here, engagement, we can see that engagement is only so effective if people feel their voice is not being heard. They're not going to want to continue engaging in the journey. So you need to make sure that people feel like they can direct and shape the journey. One of the best ways of doing this is setting up a citizens assembly. This is something that's been going on all around across Europe. It guarantees representation, that everyone's voice can be heard, leads to specific recommendations by citizens for the municipality and the city council to consider, and also helps you communicate then on actions that were suggested by citizens themselves. So a citizen assembly is different than a citizen forum or citizen consultation in that it follows a very specific methodology, and it consists of randomly selected groups of individuals at local, at national level, they convene to deliberate a very specific issue and very specific question. It's important that these randomly selected individuals sociologically represent all population, age group, social groups, gender, and sometimes even the citizens assembly cities offer compensation to the people who participate in the citizen assembly, or childcare, to kind of reduce the barriers to participation in the assembly. And here, one of the examples that we use a lot is the Grenoble's Citizen Convention for the Climate in France. So they brought together 100 citizens who worked on the question of how do we reach climate neutrality by 2050, and formulated over 200 recommendations for City Council. And it's important to note that the City Council already had their climate plan, they already have their journey, and these recommendations come on top of that. Some of them confirm what the city is already doing, and the city can communicate and have that dialogue and say, well, we're already doing this. Some of them, it brings new actions to their plan, and they update their plan with the citizens' contributions. And then the city committed to a series of actions that were proposed by the citizen assemblies. Here, if you're interested in setting up a citizen assembly, and seeing as to it's a very specific methodology, I recommend going to CNOCA. CNOCA is an expert on all these democratic processes, and they have very specific guidance on how to set up a climate assembly, specifically around the questions of climate. Sometimes the question can be specifically on climate adaptation. Sometimes it's on climate neutrality. It's up to the city to define the exact question for the citizens. But what's interesting here, and what we kind of take from Grenoble, for example, is that from the citizen assembly, you can also develop very powerful campaigns that can be present in the public space. For example, here, you'll see at a bus stop, this is the action the city has taken, and it's 100% approved by citizens. It also says the citizens have proposed it, and the metropole is taking care of it. So it really is kind of creates this very clear dialogue, and well, this is what you want, this is what you're asking for, and we're taking care of it, we're listening to you, which is very strong in communicating your journey and showing that everyone is part of this journey to climate neutrality. So I'm going to stop there. If you're curious and like these resources and these examples, I recommend that you join our hub on local governance at Energy Cities. You can subscribe to our monthly bulletins, where we regularly share resources, stories, funding opportunities, on these very specific topics about citizen engagement and also local governance and how to organize yourself locally to engage everyone in your journey to climate neutrality. Thank you. And also I have here all the links. I don't know if you'll have the presentations later or I can send them via the chat.
Thank you, Alison, for your presentation and for revealing us the good practice examples on how to mobilize citizens towards climate neutrality. I'm very sure that our participants can get inspired from the examples. The presentation will definitely reach them, so thank you for the resources. If we have any specific question for Alison, I would invite you to ask now. If not, we can move on to our next speaker, Corina Murafa, who is an energy and climate independent public policy expert and activist from Romania. And I will kindly invite her to present herself and to present us about debunking myths and countering climate misinformation in 2024. Corina?
Yes, thank you very much, Mariana. And thank you, Yuki and Ready4NetZero Romania for the invitation. I'm really happy to attend this meeting today. I have learned a lot personally from the previous speakers. So thank you as well to them for sharing so many insightful thoughts and information. I'm gonna speak a little bit as well. A brief introduction of myself. I'm an activist, a researcher, a independent advisor on climate and energy. I have been working with cities as well. As a matter of fact, at the moment, I'm part of the team that's working on the Green City Action Plan for Bucharest, Romania. But I have also been working with municipalities on the just energy transition process in Romania, Poland, Portugal, Czech Republic, several other places as well. I sit as well as a representative of Romanian civil society in the European Economic and Social Committee. So we are being by law asked by the European Commission, the Parliament and the Council to give opinions on the legislation that they table and on the policies that they make in the field of energy and climate, which means that I'm also somewhat really close to the European policy setting and setup. Similarly, I sit in the National Economic and Social Council of Romania, where the national parliament and government do the same thing. So I'm trying to give a voice to citizens and to citizen organizations as well in this forum, and give our input to policy making. So I do have also this perspective, and something that I'm deeply worried about in 2024 in particular, where there are waves of elections in so many European countries. In my home country, there's four types of elections in 1 year. We haven't had that in 20 years. And my main concern, which is something I want to put on the table very openly to you, is that climate topics, energy topics, green topics in general will be actually at the forefront of political campaigning, but in somewhat of a negative sense, in the sense that climate misinformation and fake news will become very prominent, and all of us, I think, who want to still hang on to these solutions and policies that we have designed to counter what I personally consider an existential crisis, need to be even further on top of the agenda, and to learn how to deconstruct these myths, how to debunk them, how to verify news, and how to share with our communities this perspective on, we say in Romanian, do not believe everything that flies, but I really feel it's more important than ever. Let me just briefly share with you a couple of slides I have prepared. It's not a lot. And Alison has already actually covered one element that I had also in my presentation, but that doesn't matter. As I said, and that's the title of my presentation, really, I think we have to have all hands on deck whether we are communication experts, whether we are activists, local leaders, teachers. I'm also teaching at university. Yeah, I've just had yesterday a class with first year students with 19-year-olds, and there's a very fertile ground for misinformation there among these first-time voters, which is concerning. So yeah, about debunking myths. One reason, and I'm sure Oliver can also speak to this, of why this matters today more than ever is because social media, and this is research from the scientific community, tends to propagate fake news a lot faster than it propagates scientific information, truth, and so on. There's evidence that on Twitter, false news travels a lot faster than true stories. And even at early stages of propagation, fake news tends to be extremely fast. In 5 hours after an element of fake news is put in social media, it becomes viral, which is an extremely short span of time. And I like this cartoon a lot. As you can see, misinformation is a lot more colorful, noisier, more attractive than the truth. And that's just how the web works. And especially young citizens, but not only, I think people of all ages increasingly live their lives online, and less so in real communities offline where they can chat and have a conversation. I'm sure you have seen this picture. It was viral a couple of weeks ago, and it is a deep fake. Absolutely, this has not happened. The farmers didn't take the Eiffel Tower simply like that in the farmers' protests. And what I can share with you from the European decision-making context, I happen to be in Brussels in some meetings of the European Economic and Social Committee, just when the protests broke out, and I had a chance to talk to farmers, and including to the leaders of global farming organizations and French farmers and Belgian farmers and so on. And I tried to really understand what's the cause of the protest. Because it was already spreading in social media, especially in my country, that it's the Green Deal which is causing them being upset. And what I got from these conversations was a much more nuanced reality. Farmers indeed were very unhappy, but they were very unhappy primarily with the trade policy of the European Union, with the trade agreements that the European Union is making with third countries, with Mercosur, with Ukraine. And I would say that probably that was 80% of their concerns of the causes of the protest. But in the media, it got twisted completely the other way around, that it's 80% the Green Deal to blame and 20%, other elements. While in reality, in one-to-one conversations with these farmer leaders, I felt completely different, and I understood a completely different side of reality. Just when I went back home after this event, I got called by journalists to explain to them whether the European Union will introduce a carbon passport and thus prevent citizens from traveling from one country to another because they will have a carbon passport. And at first, I didn't have any idea where this news came from. I was like, what is this? What are you talking about? And then they shared with me that in social media, 2 or 3 days before there came this news, nobody knows where from. Probably the algorithm can trace it, and most likely it's going to trace it from sources outside the European Union, which are destabilizing our union and our democracy. But it propagated so fast, and so many politicians took it up as well in their online communication. So yeah, I started to list down how we can debunk this myth. I started to do some research. I spelled it out, shared in social media, shared it with the journalists that yes, it is true that we as individuals can calculate our carbon footprint. We can figure out how much we emit by our travels and by our daily actions. But this doesn't amount to a carbon passport that's preventing free travel. Yes, from 2 years ago, there is something which is called a digital product passport. which is simply a tool that's informing citizens, especially for goods such as electronics or clothing items, how much carbon is embedded in those products. Yes, some member states have started to introduce measures, such as, for instance, making short flights more expensive or making train rides cheaper, the way Germany has done. And in some cases, indeed, banning short flights, but simply because there is a very handy train alternative. And this is the truth. These are three elements of truth, which are debunking the myth of the fact that our freedom of travel will be curtailed through a carbon passport. It's this probably step-by-step process, as Oliver was saying earlier, very plain language, point to the facts of what's behind such a myth that gets propagated. What I'm hearing, I've had meetings with journalists last week, several TV stations and radio outlets, because of this climate misinformation aspect, which I'm trying personally and professionally to counter. And the national radio station in Romania was listening, was getting questions from the audience very frequently about electric vehicles. The audience was reading news that electric vehicles are more polluting than diesel vehicles, that there is no way to recycle the batteries of an electric vehicle. So the journalists were basically painting for me this concern of their listeners that there's going to be an electric vehicle carpocalypse, an apocalypse of electric vehicle cars somehow coming. And that's what the listeners of this national radio station, which are primarily people from small towns and rural communities, this is what their concern was. So then again, I had to pull out the facts, pull out the figures, introduce hard data there, explain what is a life cycle assessment of the carbon emissions of a certain product, and the fact that if you take into account the life cycle assessment of carbon emissions of electric vehicles, they are 90% less carbon intensive than diesel cars. And that nowadays, up to 95% of their components can be recycled. Science is progressing very fast. Swedish researchers, and it's in the Nordic countries where this research is standing out mostly, because it's in these Nordic countries where the electric vehicles have come to the end of their lives in some cases, and they have managed to recover up to even 100% of the aluminum that's used in the electric vehicle batteries, 98% of the lithium. So yeah, facts are simply not painting an electric vehicle carpocalypse, but this is what citizens are genuinely concerned about. So as a result, this is a picture I took from last week in Brussels, because this fake news is propagating so fast, including driven by some political groups and so on. This was a meeting in the plenum of the European Economic and Social Committee last week, where European Commission Vice President responsible for the Green Deal, Maros Sefcovic, talked to us and explained to us what are the 2024 priorities of the European Commission. And my feeling is that there's a very big hesitation of different policies that are coming next because of these citizen concerns. And there's this tendency of pushing the brake because of the wave of elections, because of these myths that are floating around in the air, which personally makes me very concerned. And that's because right now, not doing anything on climate is simply more costly than doing what we need to do on climate. The global economic losses last year because of climate events were $120 billion, and 60% of those are uninsured losses. If there's going to be a 3.2 degrees global warming scenario, which is not unlikely with the current policies, we are going to lose as humanity 18% of our gross domestic product. That's really as if we are wiping China off the face of the ground, simply like that. We can't afford to ruin our lives like that and our economies, and we can't afford to not use green policies and green economic agenda as a tool for competitiveness. The graph that you see here in my slide shows that in 2023, half of China's economic growth came from green economy, from EVs, from storage, from batteries, and so on. So us as European Union, as European countries, if we want to compete as an economy in the next 10 to 20 years, this is the only solution. That's what I'm saying. Quickly through some ideas that I wanted to share with you, with all this misinformation floating in the air, with all this electoral slowdown that's coming up on the agenda. What could local leaders and local public administration still do? Yes, climate assemblies. I personally find this a great tool. Alison has went into this more extensively than I did. And what I saw in academic literature of researchers that have investigated the consequences of these climate assemblies is that the impact of the assembly on the citizens that attended the assembly is long lasting. It lasts several years into the future, and they start to act as agents of change in their community when it comes to climate. This new wave of deliberative wave citizens assembly is all over the world, but I did want to put this map up out there because in Romania, the country where I come from, there's unfortunately not any. And I do hope that we will have sooner rather than later later one. There's none in Croatia. Yet there seems to be a couple in Poland and in Hungary. And I think this forum is a great community for you city leaders to exchange and city administrators to exchange between each other on how that has worked, you know, in Poland, what you could do in Romania to improve the setup and so on. Not to mention this excellent guidebook that Alison also introduced, the Knowledge Network on Climate Assemblies. I also put here the link, but she also did it. So that would be one idea. A second idea, which is this perspective of building an energy community. In Europe, energy communities are now possible because of the Renewable Energy Directive. And as a matter of fact, there are around 9,000 energy communities where about 4% of Europe's citizens are members of. These energy communities, which are essentially a collective way of producing and sharing energy among community members, and by community members, I mean citizens, but also municipalities. The directive is clearly saying that in an energy community, we can join efforts together, citizens, SMEs, municipalities, to produce our own energy and to consume our own energy. And this shows that the revenue which stays in the local community is 2 to 8 times higher than the revenue of similar projects which are done by a for-profit outside of the community commercial project investor. This is a no-regret scenario. Building an energy community in your city is a no-regret scenario. There's research showing that it's not only economically beneficial, but it also fosters democracy, trust, cooperation at community level, which is something that we badly miss, I feel, as societies all over Europe, and which I think we all want more of. Last but not least, as mayors, I am not sure if the legislation is the same all over Europe, but I do assume it is. You are responsible for the buildings of the schools. They are under your ownership, they're under your maintenance, your administration. Municipalities, not mayors as physical persons, obviously. And obviously you are doing different renovation projects in schools. You are doing different works that need to be done, maintenance works for these buildings all the time. Now, the idea is how would you turn those schools, kindergartens, etc., into green schools, green kindergartens? There's a bunch of resources out there, how you can build a garden inside a school, how you can reduce the energy consumption in schools. And there's evidence showing that when you marry this kind of physical renovation of the building and turning it into a green school with work that you do with the teachers to adjust curriculum, to do some climate education, even to have a green school each year in the municipal schools, there's a big difference. And there's a big difference which is also positive for the children's results in other topics. So school attainment and school results increase if there is a green week in that school, if there is climate education in that school, because it's just very, very attractive for the children. And this is again something which municipal councils and leaders can drive a lot of at local level. And it's never a bad idea. It's money that you spend anyhow on these buildings, on these schools, because you have to. Why not spend them smarter so as to create, you know, a more lasting change? This was my presentation. I hope I didn't take longer than I should have. And yeah, I'm happy to exchange and discuss any of these points that I've raised.
Thank you, Corina, for putting a spotlight on such an important aspect, such as the one of the fake news, and for presenting us ideas about how to involve relevant actors towards climate neutrality, and also inspiring our participants to take action. I personally enjoyed the presentation. So if we have questions now for Corina, please write them in the chat. If not, we will just move on to the next section of our webinar, and I will pass the floor to my colleague Alina for the Q&A and closing remarks.
Thank you, Mariana. Thank you, Corina, also. Before the questions, I just want to read what there is also in the chat, a message from Râmnicu Vâlcea. So we have a good news for Romania. Râmnicu Vâlcea is going to organize its first citizen assembly in March or June. So they say that they are going to send 2,000 letters to citizens to organize a sort of civic lottery and then choose 20 members for the first citizen jury. So well done. We hope to see this year the first citizen assembly in Romania also. Because we already have some question for our three speakers, I will also put the first one in the chat. Let's see if I can do this. Okay. So it's from Râmnicu Vâlcea municipality. So, taking into consideration the increasing number of extremist parties across the whole Europe and their message against the European Union, do you consider that this trend and all these messages might decrease the citizen support for the European Union and therefore might affect the local, national, and European efforts to achieve climate neutrality by 2050? So, Oliver, maybe you want to share with us your opinion about this?
Okay. Do you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for this question. I really can't answer that, but I would like to share my thoughts about this. We all know that we are now living in a, let's say, brittle, anxious, nonlinear, incomprehensible world. The days are changing every day. The news are changing every day. They now call it BANI, this brittle, anxious, nonlinear, incomprehensible world. News are popping up every second, and those who know more than others seem to have more power. But sometimes these news are popping up, they are fake news, and you don't know, is it true or is it false, this news? Nobody really knows what's behind this news. Sometimes it's deep fake, sometimes part of this new news is true, and nobody really knows what is true and what is false. And I'm not sure whether we need a regulation, a control, controlling which news are false and which are right. We do have a let's say a voluntary private control, and people can check. They are checking the news, and they are proving that this news about, let's say, electric cars is wrong. but I think it also depends on the people reading it. So that's why I'm preaching and I'm telling we have to prepare the new generation. We have to prepare the youngsters. We have to teach children. We have to teach the students and up to all citizens to be critical, to read every news critical. Of course, there are millions of news, millions of informations. You can't know everything. So, but before you believe something, just ask yourself and check it with other sources. And to be the end of it is I think that we all often talk about crisis and the challenges of climate action and how bad everything is, but we as climate action communicators, we should underline the advantages of climate actions. We should show solutions, that it is possible to change something. We should, and that's what we're doing with the OIKI, because we have so many fantastic projects out there, and we try with our communication on our website to show the solutions, that there is something, and that there is an advantage for the people. It's not only a crisis, it's not only bad and something is changing. No, something is changing for good, and that's what we like to share on our website, to share with our followers.
Thank you very much, Oliver. So, Alison, what is your answer to this? Thank you.
Also, I mean, a very complex question that has to be tackled on many fronts. I think it's very difficult, and I think everything Oliver said is very relevant, and the question of education and regulating also all the new artificial intelligence, and that's very important. But in where we stand, I also think it's true that the European Union and European politics sometimes feels very removed for many. So it's easy to kind of feel, I think, a skepticism for many. And what I can say is only reinforcing communication and these engagement processes at local level is what's going to help, because the local level is the closest. And this is where a lot of people also, sometimes the political backlash comes from a feeling that your voice isn't being heard, or that these decisions are being made very, very far away from you and they don't concern you. So the more you're able to engage people at the local level, engage them in discussion, make sure you're having a dialogue, make their voice heard, the less that I think, I mean, it would the effect is that little by little, you know, people feel less that isolation. And hopefully that helps. So only these processes that we're talking about, and reinforcing communication, reinforcing dialogue at local level, are very important to making sure we can continue. And exactly, presenting the solutions. This is what we're doing. This is how you can be part of it. What is your opinion? It's just reinforcing the democratic process at local level, I would say.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we can hear Corina. What do you think about this?
It's a tough question, and I completely agree with everything that Alison and Oliver have said. Can only reinforce that, you know, prevention is better than cure. So we need to have fake news education, media literacy education in schools, which we haven't had so far. We're only starting to have that in several parts of Europe, and as much as we can, to the extent that we can have conversations with our school boards, with our teachers, with our ministers of education. Why not? This is something that should happen in all schools all over the world. It's just preparing the next generation of citizens, which we need to do. I also believe that at local level, at least, there are no regrets options, you know, such as the energy community that I've shared with you. You know, even if the Green Deal falters, even if European targets are perhaps somewhat debated at the moment for a year or two, until, you know, things settle down in Brussels. Having cheaper, green, more affordable energy at local level is something that we all can benefit from. Already, several technologies, green technologies, have become cost competitive with others, so there are no regrets options, literally, to have an energy community in your city, in your village, in your town. I'm going to be releasing soon a study on energy communities in Romania with real economic and technical data that simply shows that there are completely no regrets options and excellent choices for villages, small towns, collective buildings, etc. Yeah, I guess it's also that, and just simply showing the co-benefits of climate action, right? We want to have better air quality in our cities. We want to have summers which are more bearable in terms of temperature. So we want to have green landscapes in cities and green restoration projects. Because of that, we want to have public transport because it's we don't want to have traffic congestion anymore. So I think that really most climate solutions are good solutions, not for the climate, but for so many aspects of our lives, from our personal budgets to our health condition, to our usage of the usage of our time, and so on. And something that the mayor actually told me once is, I'm not building this new eco park, green park, because I'm a fervent believer in climate action, but I feel that I have completely lost the spirit of community in my town, that people are not hanging out with each other anymore, and they don't understand each other, talk to each other. So that's why I'm building this, because I want to build social cohesion. And that's what I think green solutions are also extremely powerful in to build this social cohesion, which we so desperately need as European societies and municipalities and cities. Those would be my 2 cents. On a macro level, and I end with this, although there's now obviously this political situation with the elections coming, and then there's going to be probably some new alliances in place and so on. I think the world is clearly heading towards decarbonization. China's going in this direction. US is going in this direction. The EU will also go in this direction. There might be some elements that will be slowed down for a little while, but I think the North Star that we have in front of us is very clear, and that's not going to go away, because the fundamentals are there, the physical solutions and the figures and facts are there.
Okay, thank you all very much, because we don't have really so much time, but we still have one more question related to crisis. Again, we all know how important is the climate situation right now, but still we have another question: which crisis is more important? How do you think this climate neutrality initiative should be approached in the current situation of political crisis at the national level for Romania, for other countries, for Europe, especially in the context of the war between Ukraine and Russia? This comes from Suceava municipality from Romania. So please, if you can be very specific and short, on point. Oliver, what do you think?
Again, a very complex question, very hard to answer. Maybe I'm not the right person. I don't feel like as a communicator, I can answer this correctly. I should be a politician to answer that, but I'm not. Of course, I'm speaking for the climate crisis. I would not call it climate crisis. I would call it climate action. And I would underline that it is not only a challenge which challenges us because of the climate, but also for our environment. I mean, that I think that would make people more understand about what we are doing, when they understand that it is not only we are destroying the planet, but also we destroy local environment, and that we are if we are engaging us in this climate action, then we also support our local environment and also support our local health, because when we are living in a nice environment, we accept all other crises, I think. And I think when we're happy with our neighbors, then there wouldn't be such a political crisis like we have right now. We would accept more foreign people maybe, or would accept, if we are happy in our local environment, that's my final slogan, then I think we also would not have such a political crisis. Just
okay. Thank you very much. So, Alison, what do you think about this question?
I mean, I think it's an interesting and important question, as in any crisis needs to be managed in a communication by good communication and tactful communication. And I think here what we saw, I mean, it was interesting what we saw with Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the energy crisis that came out of it and the response, that in the end, if you manage this communication well about the measures you're putting in place to respond to this short-term crisis, and show that it also responds to a long-term crisis that you're already dealing with, and that actually some of the measures you're putting in place, you already started putting in place earlier. You can connect also the crises and say, hey, we're dealing with this very immediate energy crisis right now, but this is helping us also on the long term for reaching climate neutrality, for living in more livable cities, etc. And as Karina was saying, I think, which is interesting, is kind of presenting always the co-benefits, that everything you're doing is not just tackling one question and then you're moving on. It's not all short term. It's not all just one solution for one problem and another solution. Is how do you present the solutions you have as solutions to many issues that can be short-term issues, help solve short-term crises and long-term crises. So managing that communication in times of crisis is very important, because it can give you a strong basis to then also continue communicating on. We saw this with cities, you know, taking energy saving measures, and some of them are continuing and keeping them in place. I mean, like, well, this is actually also good for the climate, so we're gonna persist, and I think that's the way to go, seeing how you can interconnect and always keep the long term in mind.
Okay, thank you very much, Alison. Corina, your answer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an economist by background, so I really feel we should, for giving answers to these questions, which are political in nature, I feel that we should also go back to the facts. And the fact is that Europe used to be dependent on Russian energy imports. 40% of our gas was coming from Russia before the crisis, before the invasion of Ukraine, and now it's less than 10%, including in countries which were relying up to 90% on Russian gas, like Hungary. And we have managed to remove this dependency almost completely as a European Union bloc. And we have managed to now bring down the energy prices to the levels that were out there before the crisis. So of course that the war affected the energy prices, and of course that there was a big commotion in our societies because of that. But we were resilient, and we now have on different wholesale energy markets in Europe prices which are at pre-crisis levels. So not only that we have emerged from this invasion from an energy perspective at least stronger, more resilient, but also economically at an advantage. The amount of electricity that came 100% from renewable energy sources in 2023 at EU level is 44%. That's never been attained before. And it's because we have managed to speed up some policies in a smart way, which now are helping us to bring our energy back to cheaper levels. And let's not forget also how citizen action was incentivized in a way by this, because this has been the case all over Europe. I do have the figures in my mind for Romania, but we have managed to install up to 1.5 megawatts in photovoltaics owned by citizens on their rooftops, in their yards. That's more than our 2 nuclear reactors combined. It's 100,000 people that are prosumers right now that are getting energy cheaper, and it's only 1/3 of them that got state support. The others went to the solution with their own money. We were estimating that we would have an increase of 100 megawatts each year in prosumers. Guess what? We have been having an increase of 500 each year, and it's not stopping. So I think some of these concerns are more political in nature than factual, than economic, because if we look at how our economies and our people are reacting, they are taking the smart choices forward. And this happened to be, in the context of our conversation, also the green choices.
Thank you very much. So it seems that sometimes a crisis can be a very good opportunity to find solutions. So thank you all for your very inspired and very concise presentation. I will try to read the conclusion I take from all of you, just to make an end of this very, very interesting webinar. So after all, efficient and well-targeted communication is crucial for climate action. Sorry. Yes, I think there's somebody else has a question. Yep. Where is the question?
I think Leah raised her hand.
Okay. So Leah, if you want
to ask
the question. Sorry.
I don't know if you hear me.
Yes, now we can hear you. Please, Leah.
I'm sorry for the low quality of the sound. I just wanted to compliment on what the speakers had to say. And also, I didn't want to interrupt. Sorry for that. Regarding the crisis that we've gone through in the recent years, the first one, very tough, was the pandemic. And since we didn't know exactly how to tackle climate neutrality at that point, we at OER started to build on these common things between what the pandemic is requiring, is challenging, and what a strategy for climate neutrality is actually offering, and how important is that we have deep energy retrofitting of buildings, because at home was where we had the comfort and where we started building the new future, working from home, moving businesses at home, teaching children at home, because that was the challenge brought by the pandemic. So we try to show how a crisis is actually urging what we have to do, and how important is that we have a clear vision of the very, very good measures to implement. And also in the current situation, the war also, as Corina mentioned, is pushing us forward to move, let's say, for instance, for renewable energy sources, which are a key element for the future. We are producing our own energy. We don't need anyone. And this is how we tackle crisis, by implementing measures. And it's important to also build them, develop them before the crisis, just to be prepared. So that was all I wanted to add. And from the perspective of a communicator, I think building the right messages according to the right targets, I think it's also very important, because you can motivate different people, different target groups through the right messages, through the keywords. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leah. So back to the conclusion, and then we can wrap this up. Like I say, efficient and well-targeted communication is crucial for climate action and any type of similar initiative related to sustainability. Now, thanks to you, we know some very good tips about building a comprehensive message and adapting to the target audience. We should now put everything in practice. However, communication alone can make a lot of changes. We need to focus on mobilization of the essential stakeholders, especially the citizen. For this, we can raise awareness, engage, and empower them using a language that they can understand. And last but not least, important, our reality is full of fake news related to climate change. And it's our responsibility to be aware of this and find the right sources of information and adequate tools to communicate real and checked facts. Don't forget the three main ideas that our presenters now, our speakers share with you for major and local authorities: climate assembly, energy communities, and green schools. I hope that all this cover a bit what you all have to share with us today, and we really hope that all these tips and tools will help you in your work. Thank you very much. Mariana?
Okay, thank you. So just before we close, I want to announce the next webinar, the last of our series. It will take place on the 12th of March, and it will focus on energy efficiency and energy poverty. It will be hosted by PNETS. Isabella, if you want to add something more, if not.
Yeah, I can already announce that the speaker of our next webinar will be Dora Biondani from Energy Poverty Advisory Hub, the initiative of European Commission, which is helping and supporting cities to work locally on tackling energy poverty. We will also have the best practices from the local level, from the municipality. So I'm already inviting you. Follow our website, our online platform, where soon we will publish the news about next webinar with a link to registration. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, and hopefully see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.